it has been announced that TSM's head coach, Casey Woodbuck, has been essentially removed from the team. He made a tweet where he said, "Was told tonight I was no longer needed as the head coach for TSM. Out of respect for the players, I will not expand upon it further." So the head coach is fired, essentially. As a team, for me, they are struggling, which might sound strange because, okay, they're 7-3. They have a 70% win rate. They're second in the league. They are one of the top NA teams, but it's in the context of what you saw when you saw this roster on paper. It's in the context of what you imagine should be possible from this team once they had proper coaching, once they had the infrastructure in place, once they're in a team house, played scrims, and then played some matches. Remember, we've already played the first round robin. We've already played everyone at least once. And obviously the person they played twice is CLG. So 7-3 looks good on paper until you consider, well, who's it against? So the teams behind them are C9, CLG, teams that, okay, C9 had some expectations. People didn't expect CLG to be that good. They're only one win behind them. NRG and Team Liquid are 2 wins behind them. NRG obviously has looked better, but has had their issues. And then Team Liquid is surprising that they're even 5-5 when you consider their lineup and how they've had to change it. But you look at this 7-3 record of TSM, their losses are to CLG, Immortals, Energy. Now, those are 3 of the top 5 teams in the league, basically. And most people, Immortals obviously the clear top one. CLG's right around their level. So basically, most of their losses are to the good teams, and they've basically, aside from beating C9 and winning a game off CLG, so 2 of the 7 wins that they've had are legit over the good teams. Not the best teams, but good teams. The other 5 wins are against the worst teams in the league, or against all the teams that you shouldn't, essentially are almost free wins. They're just bad teams, essentially. Then you look at some of the games that they have where they did lose, or even when it was risky. So the NRG game that they lost was the one where they got 0 kills and NRG had like 18 or 19. The one where GBM played Zillion and bodied them. Then they had the game that they won recently against Renegades, where even though Renegades was playing with a brand new support player who's only in his second game at that point in time, a brand new top laner who's played his first game at that time or something like that. And despite this, and then you look at the draft pick, TSM had all these OPs all over the place. They had a comp of Fiora, Kindred, Lulu, Kalista, Alistair. They have some amazing picks. Despite this, they were down like 6k gold at one point in time. What won them that game is, yeah, they did their part to get back in the game once they had the chances, but Renegades was up. Renegades had a 6k gold lead. Renegades forced a Baron. Crumbs gave them a gift by playing Nidalee, probably one of the worst competitive Nidalee games you'll ever fucking see in League of Legends history for jungle. TSM did not have a good performance overall. And this was like when they finally went 2-0 for a week. This is not a good performance at all. So even though they've got a record that's good, this is far from the best team in the league. This is far from a team who's contending to be the best team in the league with Immortals. So there's some issues still for TSM. And now that they've fired their coach, it's an appropriate time to discuss TSM and the coaching aspect and all the rest of it. Because when I saw that thing in the documentary, like, TSM finally go 2-0, I was like, they played fucking Echo Fox with subs, and Renegades is a brand new support and top laner. This is not like finally go to... They finally got a shit enough week that they could go 2-0. They weren't playing a good team that could beat them. Now, in terms of the coaching and the infrastructure, that was obviously something else that was rehauled along with the whole roster. So they brought in this Casey Woodbuck guy. He's a guy where the storyline was, he's a sports guy, not an esports or a League of Legends guy. He'd played nationally ranked baseball and basketball in college or something along those lines. But when he'd gotten injured, he'd moved into coaching. He'd been a pitching coach in baseball. And the problem was, when he came in, as you'd expect, he was bigging himself up and explaining all the things he was going to do and what his approach would be. And right there, I was already a little bit skeptical, the way he presented things. Like, for example, he said that he knows how to read players and know how to coach specific players, and that he was going to implement this structure within the team that, in esports people wouldn't really have had before, but he was going to bring it from real sports and implement this structure and all of it. He was going to teach the team to come together as a team. He's going to build solid work ethic, all these things. this all sounds great on paper. This all sounds great until you've actually had to do anything. But did they do any of these things? We can't really know, but we look at the team and you watch those TSM legends and you feel like a lot of these aspects weren't there. Like, was he good at reading the players? It feels like he was actually quite off in reading some of the players. Or he would try to approach some of the players all in one manner. Admittedly, it's an edited show, and yes, we don't see everything. But from the things we had to go off, it feels like when you look at some of the problems, he wasn't doing such a good job even from the coaching aspects. A lot of the team seemed to be them discussing things amongst themselves, discussing things with the Jarge guy, and it seemed like the team was working things out on their own mostly. You look at the... If you want to see the problem I have, it's that they specifically got this KC guy, who seems like an earnest guy, seems like a nice enough guy. It feels like they got him to be this head coach guy, an out-of-game coach, and as a result, because he's not going to do anything in the game, and he's not going to get his respect from being an expert about the game, that's why he needed to be really good. That's why he needed to come in and he had to be very good. And if I have to look at his personality, I have to say, it does feel like he wasn't very good in terms of having the authority of the players. It doesn't feel like he has the natural charisma of a leader, unfortunately, in that sense. Or the gravitas behind his words where you know he really knows what he's talking about and he locks you in. Because when I watched the TSM Legends episodes, I watched when he was talking and he would be giving his speeches and a lot of it was rhetoric and buzzwords. But when he was giving these speeches, which on the surface, the things he was saying had some merit, I would see the players, the ones nearest to him would be looking like hella awkward and just like looking away, like Svenskeren would be like, and like Doublelift would like, and they seemed like they felt uncomfortable with this situation. Then you watch when Reggie speaks in the episodes and everyone's locked in and everyone's engaged and everyone's responding to what he's saying. There's a difference between the respect that was granted by the players, but I don't think the KC guy did a very good job of earning it, of getting people, winning over those relationships. I mean, some of the things he said, they just sounded like nonsense. Like before the Echo Fox game, Echo Fox, remember, was a dog shit team because they had subs, and they're not even a mega team anyway. He said this line right before they went out to the stage where he said, like something like, just remember, they need to be reacting to us at all times, right? In some abstract world, I understand what that means, as in like be proactive, make plays, force them to make the reactions so that they have to make a quick decision. That's all great, but as actual advice, it's not very good. Because, for example, what happens if you just fall behind early on? What happens if they have a winning lane that they're snowballing? What happens if they have better objective control, or they push you off some objective and then you're not sure what to do the next one? You can't just think, well, what we're going to do, guys, is go out and we're going to make them react to us at all times. Like, it's just very generic, bland advice. I get it, that's a way to put people in a mindset. Okay, that's all cool, but it's not actually that great. And if your only job is to do that, and your only job is to win the respect of the players and then to be the out-of-game coach and the mental coach in this aspect, you're probably not doing that good a job there. Likewise, there was that scenario where when they'd beaten Echo Fox and it wasn't even a good game, they come back and they probably, I think it was the Echo Fox game. Yeah, the Echo Fox game. When they come back, he did that thing where he said, like, we'll go back to the team house, and then he said, like, can you guys smile? And I realize he might have been saying it to think like, let's put that behind us for a little bit. We'll talk about the house. Let's just like smile, let's get some good feelings going. The problem was, in terms of that whole reading the players thing, that was exactly the wrong moment to do it. Because if you hear what players had been saying before that and what they said after that, you can see that, Svenskeren didn't really speak, but the other four players were all unhappy. They were all frustrated. They were all still thinking about this game and they were upset with how it was, and they wanted to emphasize and they wanted to verbalize and communicate to each other that this isn't acceptable. We know this is fucked up. We know we shouldn't even have won that game, and we are not happy with that. We're not going to go, yeah, we won the game, rah, rah, great, we're 1-0 this week. They all were communicating that. Like, Doublelift had been saying, like, we would lose in the playoffs and play like that. Bjergsen says right afterwards, don't see any reason to be happy. Which obviously a different topic, smiling and being happy, but that's because Bjergsen wants to emphasize, like, I'm not happy with this win. That's bullshit. Like, this isn't even a good team we've beaten. Even Hauntzer, who normally you would expect to be more quiet, chimes up and says, like, essentially similar sentiment. That's not good to have won like that. And Doublelift said, like, we would lose in the playoffs if we played that. So, while I get what he might have been trying to do, that probably wasn't the moment to do it. In fact, that's the moment, obviously armchair coach here, where I'd say that's the moment where you let people stew in it a little bit. Actually, you let people get mad at that. You get a bit frustrated at that and think, oh, fuck, why would we lose like that? Oh, this isn't good. And they don't have any answers right then. And maybe, first of all, they might work it out a little bit themselves, and by expressing it to each other, maybe they get it. Like, hey, we're all on the same page here. This is bullshit. You can't accept that. I don't care that we won the game. Then, when you get back to team house, maybe that's when you go, right, now let's regroup. Now let's figure things out. Felt like that was too early. They've just lost the game there. It's a bit too early to try and just, like, make people turn it off like a switch there. I mean, this was the thing where people criticized him on Reddit after that TSM Legends episode. And he made a Reddit comment that was quite long, explaining like, oh, people don't see all the things I do, or like it's edited or whatever. Unfortunately, I can't find the comment, but it was that sort of a gist. And trying to make the case that, I am doing more stuff and I'm not in every episode. But then he deleted the Reddit comment for whatever reason. Now, the problem is, I went back and I found all the quotes and things that he said in Reddit posts and things that he said when he was assigned to the team. And you'll see that, unfortunately, he talked a big game, but I don't think he delivered it. Or he misunderstood what esports athletes were like and he didn't know how to integrate it with them. So he said, "This year, I will be working with my strategic coach, George, to help the team reach their personal and team-oriented goals. George will focus on their performance in-game by helping the players understand the fundamental strategy of the game, adjust to metas, pick ban, etc. You should all be extremely hyped by how ridiculously talented he is in this regard. Since this is an extremely time-consuming task, I will take responsibility for everything else so he can remain focused." So you can see that. He's already telling you, George is doing everything in-game. He's doing all the analysis, all the strategical aspects. We're not doing any of that. This KC guy's doing all the other stuff outside the game. So that's what you have to judge him on. "My role as the head coach will be to create a culture and structure within the team that promotes a strong work ethic." Seems fine. Seems like they practiced enough. That's fine. "A resilient team bond." That's kind of there in as much as they do all seem to understand the concept of where they are in the team. The problem is they don't have a good bond. Like, even if personally they like some of each other, in game they actually have quite poor synergy in a number of different spots on the map. And as an overall team, they have fairly mediocre synergy. And I think they get away with it in some games just because of how fantastically skilled the players are. And a sense, back to the quote, "and a sense of responsibility to do everything the right way, the TSM way." Right? That line there is just PR bullshit filler. What does that mean, the right way? And to do everything. You have a responsibility to do everything the right way. Not only that, the TSM way. What the fuck is the TSM way? Not only that, you're telling us here you're going to come in and create this new culture and bonds like that, but you're going to do everything the TSM way. What, the old way? It doesn't make... This is just nonsense. This is what I hate about coaching now, is that a lot of these people have great concepts and they have experience doing this, but their actual ability to verbalize and articulate what they mean is fairly poor, and you just hear buzzwords all the time. Buzzwords are great in as much as they're like macros. They're a short way of saying something simple. Well, ironically, the word macro actually is a buzzword in League of Legends. It's a simple way to gather a load of concepts we all understand. Problem is, we all understand them very vaguely. That's why it's a tiny little reference. What you need to do is, don't just say synergy, say synergy. And what I mean by that is the way you interact in this specific way, and it should be better composite. You have to unpack the idea. You can't just say the term and leave it at that. That's what a lot of analysts do. They say, I'll get a better synergy here and play at a better tempo. And I think these are all great words, mate, but you've got to start unpacking them. This is shit for interviews, not for your players. Okay, so anyway, back to the quote. "I have laid out my expectations to the players and I will ensure they follow through." Right? Come on, mate. How are you going to do that? That's one of the problems I see with this guy. When I looked at all that stuff and I watched the episodes and I see the way the team plays, it's like he thought if he came in and he was like, "I'm going to be a disciplinarian and I'm going to put this structure in place and I'm not going to accept anything except the best. I'm going to demand excellence." These are all great things to fucking say before someone has to actually do something, including you. And I don't think he succeeded in this respect. So let's see. "I am telling everyone right now, I will not accept anything but their best effort, and I will not allow the culture of this team to break down." Well, you failed there, mate. The culture never really even got started. It took weeks and weeks, and there was all these excuses, and people say, "Oh, it's all right, we'll fix things. I know that we aren't living up to expectations." This is the line that kills me. "This will be the most unified and disciplined team in NA." You failed abjectly at that. You did not in any way succeed in that goal, and if you don't accept anything less than the best effort and all that stuff, well, either your best effort wasn't good enough, or you just didn't put enough of best effort. I'd imagine it's probably the former, actually. So then look at some of these Reddit comments I've got from 3 months ago. This is when he joined the team. Okay, so he says, "You are right. They are not mutually exclusive." Forget what the context of that is. "That being said, I told them in our very first meeting, I am not your friend. I will be friendly. We will have a great fucking time working our butts off. But in the end, I am their coach, and they will listen to me. They will listen to George. They will have our ear, and we will always be looking for their feedback as they play the game, but we choose the direction of this team." That doesn't seem to have happened. Like I said, he didn't have their ear. Didn't seem like they were listening to the same degree. They were sat there, they were hearing, but were they listening? I don't know that they always were. Go and watch. People are twiddling things, people are tapping on things, people are looking off over here, people are just like waiting for the speech to end. Reggie talks, it's a totally different matter. They're all engaged. "I said in another post, the players are extremely misunderstood." I mean, that's great. At that point in time, he'd known him like, what, a few weeks or something, and he already knows they're all misunderstood. Okay, mate. It's my responsibility to set a culture within the team that enforces a strong work ethic and attitude. Again, that's great to say all that, but how are you going to do it? I don't think you know because you didn't manage to. The culture I plan to set will not have room for any egos. Oh, fuck off. Well, then you're going to invent a new style of coaching that's never existed before. Think of any great sports team or esports team and tell me that there was no egos. This is one notion about American sports that fucking tilts me, is that they think the ego is the enemy. The ego is the enemy to a degree, as in when it's overinflated or when it's misapplied or when you get a great competitive drive and it's channeled into like beating down a teammate who feels like let them down instead of like channeling it against the enemy and wanting to be the star and wanting the ball and wanting the responsibility, and that's good ego. It's this idea that there's going to be no egos. This TSM should have a massive ego in Bjergsen, that he's going to be the best mid laner, that he's going to be carry resources and he's going to dominate games. They should have a massive ego in Doublelift, that if they put him in a position to succeed, part of the reason why he gets to have a massive ego and wants to carry the game is because we put you in a position to succeed. Now it's your job to succeed. That's all great. All this bullshit about the idea that we're all just going to be equal and there's going to be no egos, I hate that sort of shit because it just doesn't, it's not reality. It's not the way that these sports work. It's not the way the philosophy of sports work yet. And so when people say that stuff, especially when they're coaches themselves and they've been competitors, it belies to me that they have quite a weak understanding of the game. Like if I had to guess, this is a guess for you, okay? I would guess when he was a player, he was a team player. And he was a role player, and he wasn't the best player on the team, and therefore he had to work with people and facilitate other people and not have an ego and sacrifice. That's all great. It's different with the different carry roles and star roles. Everyone does not have the same mentality and responsibilities within the game. Now then, they all know that, and they will not lose sight of it. Okay, here's another one. My approach to managing players, setting a culture, and creating a team bond will remain the same, presumably as real sports. It just means that I cannot expect everything to transition perfectly. There are a lot of things I know I will not be able to change within the scene, and I can't constantly try and force things to be the same as real sports. I need to be adaptable. The players are extremely misunderstood. It is my responsibility to set a culture within the team that enforces a strong work ethic and attitude. It's always about work ethic. Like, work ethic doesn't seem to be the problem with this team. That's not the aspect. It's more like they don't seem to mentally be on the same page. In fact, Doublelift every TSM episode is like, oh, we're not on the same page, things are off. Yellow Star gets progressively more frustrated as the show goes on. Bjergsen seems all over the place because now he has the help in terms of the talent, but now the team's worse. You can see that, yeah, they haven't got a good bond, they haven't got a good attitude in terms of how they think of the whole unit. The culture I plan to set will not have... Oh, I've already read that part. Let me see. Okay, here's a good one. So, let me see. Oh no, he actually just repeated the same shit about the egos. Okay, here's another comment. I can't speak for Josh. My responsibility will be to notice when conversations are no longer being productive. If someone wants to continue a conversation that is going in circles or is negative, they can finish it with me later in private. Like, it's the way that, again, it's like so much grandstanding, like making out like you're like the big boss guy who's like fucking some Greg Popovich level guys. Like, I will not tolerate that sort of shit in my team. Like, come on, man. I mean, it's all talk. I can bring established structure, general coaching ability, culture, work ethic, mental philosophy, etc. Tons of things transition over. I am able to use the same experience and skills and apply it to something new and exciting. I will challenge myself every single day while growing into a better coaching person. This sounds like the sort of shit that people write in the fucking letter when they're trying to get the job. And they're like, I will promote synergy among my co-workers. I will work each day diligently towards the philosophy and aims and goals of my company, ensuring that my team is more than the sum of their, like all just buzzwords and fucking rhetoric. Yeah, okay, actually, maybe I should break down what rhetoric is, because the reason why I always use this term for this sort of speech, okay, so the standard definition of rhetoric, okay, is the idea that, like, you're trying to like put together an argument that's like persuasive and you use like the right reference points and the way you construct the argument is going to get a point across. But there's also another aspect to it where it sounds great like all that, but there's maybe nothing under it. Like it's a bunch of words that all sound great and they sound like they make a point, but actually you didn't have anything behind it. There was no force behind it. They weren't really making a good point. You just said it to try and have that effect. That's what it feels like a lot of American sports culture is like, and particularly in League of Legends where the coach is saying all this shit like, we're going to play as a team and we're going to be bonded and we're going to do all this. It's like, okay, mate. Break it down for me. How do you do those things? What are you doing? Now, I'm not saying he has to break down in public. I don't think these people can break it down in private. I think they've just learned all the fucking buzzwords. That's why there's a famous thing in the Western office culture where middle managers, guys who are like, they manage a team of people, but they're not the top guy, they've just got into that role. So what they do is they go and buy like Management Weekly, and they go and buy these books that just tell them all these fucking buzzwords to say. And they just go around spamming these buzzwords, synergy, promoting cohesive team bonding, all this fucking buzzword, without really knowing what they're talking about, the techniques behind it, and just hoping that they have some success, and then attributing in some like voodoo manner to like that's what did it. But you have to be able to have a deeper understanding of how you're gonna motivate someone's performance, how you're gonna craft this guy who isn't a team player into maybe not being the best guy who sacrifices everything, but having a role within the team and understanding to let other people in on some level. So there's some kind of compromise there. These are the sort of things that coaching is. It's not just knowing all the buzzwords to say, not playing fucking coaching buzzword bingo, which is what this guy's doing so far. So, I mean, in general, I also noticed, not just from the documentary, but from the team in terms of the coaching staff, but not the players. The players did a really good job, actually, of being level-headed and understanding when wins, like Echo Fox, like Renegades, are not acceptable from the way they went. And the Team Liquid game earlier in the split, when they almost lost to Team Liquid, who at the time was shit. Now, what I hate, though, is that the coaching staff and the documentary constantly push this narrative, which casters do all the fucking time, which is like, when you lose to like the medium or top teams, and sometimes in embarrassing fashion, when you then beat a shit team afterwards, they go, and TSM bounced back, and they really fixed a lot of the problems they had in game one, and now they really overcame something. How did they? They were playing a shit team now. Maybe they would have won if they'd been playing that team first. Let's see when they play the good teams if they've learned anything and bounced back and overcome it. It's just like such a bullshit narrative, man. So, okay, then someone asked him if Bjergsen was, like, toxic or whatever the fuck, or some dumb shit like that, and he actually made this comment that said, no, Bjergsen was the most coachable and respectful player I have been around. This is, like, actually after he'd already been fired. As I said before, you did not see the full interaction of the conversation. I pushed the players, including Thorin, to speak their minds so I could address their feelings. He also has the biggest stride to improve and an overall great attitude. There is a reason he is arguably the best mid laner in the West. I was lucky to work with him and the rest of the players. Now, I agree with a lot of what he said there. I do believe Bjergsen has a drive to be one of the best. I think that is why he's one of the best. I think he is a little bit cocky and very self-confident, but I think that's a good thing if channeled to the right ends. The notion he's the most coachable player. I mean, you've barely coached anyone in esports, mate. So, and you've got players on your team like Doublelift, famously uncoachable. Sven Skeren, literally considered like toxic to some degrees. That's exaggerated, but not a very communicative guy. And then Holtz is a guy who's just chilled out doing his job and not complaining much. And Yellowstar's one of the great leaders of all time. So, first of all, I don't think he's the most coachable player in the fucking team. And also, you've barely coached anyone. So that means next to nothing, mate. You need to know of like a few players before we talk about that. So, I said enough about that guy for now. Obviously, I don't think it was going on that well, and I can understand if that's all he did, if he didn't have a game understanding why they've decided to remove him. Although, with that said, how would I say this? With that said, when it comes to that aspect, though, I do have to say, removing someone that early, before the split's even finished, either something's gone on behind the scenes where the players are just like, we don't want this guy, doesn't work for us at all, or he's done something fucked up. Because, unless the guy's done something egregious, like you walked over one day and he was like stirring your coffee with his dick, why not just play out the rest of the split? People obviously sometimes get better for the playoffs, people figure things out for series, etc., etc. You haven't really had a full chance to be the coach yet. You haven't had a full split. You've been removed as soon as there was any problems. Even though maybe some aren't all your problems, all that stuff about infrastructure, you didn't do a very good job early on. They kept saying that themselves. Jarge was trying to say it himself. Then the others are saying, we don't have a good system. And then Reggie was coming in like, I should have set the expectations better and had this structure for hierarchy and communication. So they didn't do a good job in that respect. Now then, with that said, let me think. So, okay, let's talk about the Jarge guy now. He's the guy where he was an analyst, as far as I know, for Fnatic, when they had those great splits last year. And automatically, because he was in Fnatic and they won a lot, everyone said Dalo's a god, and then now they found out with this guy, he must be a god too, his role, and he must be part of the reason why they got the 19. I'm sure he's part of the reason. Is he one of the main reasons? That's the question. Seems unlikely, right? Seems a bit ridiculous. They had a fantastic team of players, and Yellowstar is a godlike captain. Now then, key point I'm making is no one really knows what he did in Fnatic. We don't know. And it's very tricky to judge Fnatic because you have to factor in that they had Hooney, this incredible pickup out of nowhere who's been dominating and still is dominating LCS, admittedly in NA now. And then on top of that, they had Yellowstar, who seems like one of the greatest in-game leaders we've ever had in League of Legends, probably the greatest in the West because of how many different players he's played with. And the fact that he could take all these rookies and shot call them all around the map and know how to play all these different scenarios out in incredible fashion, and they could rush all those Barons all the time because he had the timing for that. So when you've got those advantages, it's hard to know how much the coaching staff is doing. Even though obviously I would assume they are good, I don't know if they're the best though. Now, Reginald says in one of the TSM episodes that it was really hard to trust the old coaching staff with managing the team. He means like Lokodoko and those analysts, etc. Which obviously he removed Lokodoko before Worlds and before the end of the summer split and took over himself. He even says there that the players demanded he stepped in and took over as the coach. Fair enough. Now, I do think they should have given this coaching staff the full split. I think playoffs can be different. And like I say, unless it's egregious, I wouldn't necessarily do it. Now, with the Jarge guy, I haven't got that much to say because obviously he's an analyst. It's hard to know what they're doing. And they've had some drafts seemed okay. Some are a little weird, which I'll maybe get into later in terms of some of the champion picks. But one thing that I did find very strange was in an early episode when they get back to the team house and they're starting to scrim with their new lineup. He actually debates and says, he debates whether they should scrim Immortals, who obviously have since gone on to be undefeated and be the best team in the league. And he says that as a rule, he tried to avoid them playing against anyone who they were going to play in the first 2 weeks of LCS, and then asks them what they think. And the other players say like, no, I think we should play them, like they are going to be like one of the best teams out there. We should lock them down for scrim practice. Other people will get to play them and get improved. This is actually staggering to me. This is something that makes it really weird for me, the whole aspect of assigning all the Fnatic success to this guy. Because that, to me, is actually the opposite of what a really good team does. I can tell you right now, a really good Korean team practices the other really good Korean teams. It doesn't matter that in a week you might play them. First of all, you're not going to do everything that you did in practice against them, and they're not going to do everything they did against you. You're practicing for different reasons. The draft's probably going to be different in 2 weeks anyway, with how the metagame unfolds. So what you want to do is get the best practice against the highest level opponents and get yourself into game shape. So this is very weird, because this is almost like some old school shit of thinking that like you're going to come up with some magical secret and you don't want to let them know what you're doing, then you're going to bust it out on them in the LCS game. To me, that's a very naive way, and that's not the way modern esports work. From my experience in CSGO, the top teams all practice together even before tournaments where they're all going to play each other. Likewise, in other parts of the League of Legends regions, top teams practice with each other. So if they did this in Fnatic, that's shocking to me. I would hope that they didn't. He also made this comment where he said, he outlines all these small misplays that they might have made in practice, like, maybe someone blew a flash, a cleanse early on, or someone just got caught, or someone missed a skill shot, or someone just went in fucked up their vision. And then he says this weird line where he says, like, he just assumes that stuff won't happen on stage because people tend to be more careful and not make those mistakes. Even though I get what he means to a degree, like, it's not the end of the world that it happened now. As a general coaching mindset, you should have the mindset of this great quote, which is something like, the way you do it in practice is the way you'll do it in a game. The way you practice, you're training your habits to then in the game be on autopilot, able to do a lot of the simple things. So if you're allowing fuck-ups to just go willy-nilly in practice and not focusing and playing with purpose, then in the game those are going to happen. And then you're going to be even more scuffed because you're going to be like, oh shit, I thought this wouldn't happen in a real game. And the whole thing's going to go to shit. So it's not a big deal, but I just don't think there's a general way to describe it to people. He did a good job there. Now, Reggie, there's a bunch of times that he talks to the team in the reality show, and some interesting things are said. So one thing that I did find a bit weird was he starts talking about how he wants everyone to communicate more. Because obviously last year's team had players who barely communicated. They had fucking Santorin was super silent. They had Dyrus just chills out. They had Lost Boy can speak English, but isn't going to do a lot. And Wild Turtle obviously isn't super proactive anyway in terms of comms. So it was all on Bjergsen. So I understand what he means. He wants everyone contributing in terms of communication, like everyone giving information. But then what's weird is he says that they expected too much of Yellowstar joining the team. This is what's weird, because I want that from Yellowstar. I want him to be the captain. I want him to take most of the shot calling, and I want people to feed him information, and then he makes the calls for them. Now, I don't want him to necessarily micromanage everyone in all their lanes, but I want him to be the number one voice. Now, what's weird is Reginald then goes on to outline that the shot calling should be done by everyone. He doesn't want the team built around one shot caller, and he doesn't even think that's the right way to build a team. Now, that is absolutely, I mean, it's not shocking to me, is I don't think Reginald's a very cerebral, great thinker about League of Legends. He's definitely not good at articulating himself, but it's shocking in as much as that a top Western team with all these resources is really, professing that concept to their players and telling the players that's how we're going to run the team, because I think that's totally wrong. Let's look at the top 4 teams at last year's Worlds. SK Telecom, Marin is the main shot caller. He shot calls a lot of the game, and you can see from the way he plays as he's shot calling most of the game. Rock's Tigers, at the time, Coup Tigers, Smeb is the main shot caller. He's doing the majority of that. Fnatic, the team Yellowstar was just on. Yellowstar, main shot caller, reads the game, tells everyone all the shit. What, you think Hooney and Reynolds are popping in with all their comms? I don't think so. So, I don't think that's a good approach, and I think that belies what some of the problems in the team already are, and are going to be. But I'll get to some of that later, because now we're going to go player by player. I want to break down the team and some of the issues I see there and how I see them performing. Because on paper, they are fantastic. They should be the best team in the entire West, just on paper. Although I'd argue HQK, yes, has players, some of them who might not be as good, historically, but the balance looks better on paper for HQK. It doesn't surprise me that they're very good at macro and skilled. So, Doublelift, let's start with this guy, the new addition from CLG. The thing about Doublelift is, don't have too many complaints. He's been consistently good, he's had some really big games, and in general, he's just been good. But his main problem is, it feels like since he's joined TSM, I mean, he used to do this sometimes, but it almost feels like like the ghost of Wild Turtles inhabited him. Because he does Wild Turtle type ham shit. Like, uses escapes on champions to go even more balls deep and then try and get a kill. And then either you get the kill or the 2 kills and clean up, or you just get killed and you're gone and you've been irresponsible with your gold lead and now you're dead and a carry's gone from your team. He does do that sometimes. With that said, though, in general, I think he's been good and he's been consistent. That's the key thing. I think he's been the best player for this team so far. So I like his performance. I do think in terms of champion pool, he should probably focus more on just playing OP champions. Like, if he has the opportunity to play a Kalista or play a Corki, he should be playing them because he's going to dominate in this team if he does that. Sometimes when he's sticking with Tristana and stuff like that, I'm not sure that's like that. Those are the right picks for him. It does feel like in TSM Legends, he talks way too much. And what I mean by that is he gets so involved in talking about the macro and the strategy aspect of the game and the way that they're going to play and what they should have done and how people even in other lanes should have played things out. What's weird about that is I can actually see why he's doing it. Like, I feel like when I watch him, what he's done is working with Afromu for so long and being in CLG when Afromu had a big effect on that. They were good at like lane swaps and they were good at the early game situations of playing out this chess move of only having a few pieces and which do you put where, and they were good at general macro in the middle of the game. And so I can almost feel like when he's trying to talk here, he's trying to process in his brain, what did Afro and CLG used to do there? How did they used to think? What was our approach to how we split them up, or how we took this objective, or how we played more aggressively with the vision control? It's almost like you can feel him trying to process that. Problem is, he's not the guy who figures that out. He's not the guy who's going to come up with a great analysis there. He's not that good at that aspect of the game. I've always joked about Doublelift. If he was on my team, I'd be like, listen, you're a brilliant player. You're super skilled. You're going to kill creeps and hit enemies with auto attacks. That's your job. They're going to talk. They're going to think. You're going to give very basic information. They're going to do all the thinking for you, mate. That's really the way I would have the team. I realise for morale, they want like, I want you to communicate and have an equal part. It's a lot of bullshit, mate. It's not going to work. So it is shocking to me how much they let him talk. Yellowstar, his lane partner. Now, first of all, watching him play in TSM has confirmed what I always thought about Yellowstar from Season 3 through to Season 4 as a support player, which is, in Season 5 he improved a bit in this respect, but he has always been overrated as an actual support. As in, as a shot caller, fantastic. As a captain, good. As a guy who synergizes well with his AD carry to like help them get through lane, you know, and in general, he never had aggressive AD carries who went balls deep on lane dominant. Very good at that aspect, playing safe. Now, as an actual just laning support, never thought he was that sick. Thought he was like average, above average, and I don't think he's been that good in TSM. Especially not they're taking more of the shot calling responsibility away from him. It makes him just into not that great a player. That's the main appeal of having Yellowstar, is to have him as a shot caller. The big problem I see Yellowstar having right now is with the shot calling, and it feels like he's not a dominant enough personality to assert himself, to be decisive, to make sure people know, I made the call there, that was the right call, I told you to do this, and you chose something else to do something else. We can't have that system in place. There has to be the hierarchy where you follow what I say. Now, maybe Reggie's not going to let that happen, but that's what I see as what should happen. Because when I watch them play and I listen to any of these comms, I hear Bjergsen short-circuiting his calls and not doing what he says or making a different call or just doing something else entirely. Now, in Season 4 Fnatic, my insider sources often told me this was a problem when they had Expeke and Sowers on the team. Was like, yeah, Yellowstar could be the shot caller and his job was that, and he could do the overall stuff, but sometimes they would just not listen to what he said, or they would do the opposite, or he would say something and they'd go, no, back off. When he just said, like, go in now, we can catch them here, they'd be like, no, back off, play safer. Sometimes they wouldn't listen to his comms, even if they were good. So, but the problem is, he wasn't as assertive back then. So my problem as I see it is that he isn't a dominant personality. So I think part of why it worked so well in Season 5, the shot calling, is there were so many rookies. There were so many players who looked to him, looked up to him, followed his lead, wanted him to call the whole game, didn't know what to do. Whereas when he has these veterans, Doublelift, Bjergsen, Expeke Soaz, who have played the game as long as him, are better than him, and think they know how the game should be played, and are making their own individual perspective, worldview calls, that he's not going to have the same authority, and people aren't going to listen to him as much, unfortunately. So I think Season 5 exaggerated how great his shot calling was, in as much as he's not the dominant personality their shot caller usually need to be. He does seem like a very even-keeled individual. Should probably be a bit more proactive in terms of how he does this stuff, but he seems like to have a good attitude overall. Doesn't seem like he rages at all. I like the fact that he was frustrated with the Echo Fox win. You see, as the show's gone on TSM Legends, it seems like he's gotten more and more frustrated, and he's not accepting that these are just wins that we've got a good win. He knows that these aren't good enough if they're going to play internationally. Bjergsen. Obviously, Bjergsen was the star player last year, and he was sometimes the hard carry when everyone else shit the bed. Now, he started the split fairly poor, I have to say. Very average player at the beginning of the split. But playing with teammates as the split's gone on, it feels like he's gotten better and better. And now he's back to being one of the elite mids. One problem I have seen is it feels like he's played way too many champs. They've played 10 games and he's played 7 different champions. If you're a fantastic player like Bjergsen, yes, the flavour of the week meta changes, but you should be sticking to the 2 or 3 meta champions that you're fantastic at, then having the odd pocket pick in. So obviously he has his Syndra, which he's won 3 games on. That should be the pocket pick to go with the other ones. I'm also interested, by the way, to see how that Syndra will work out. If he keeps going to it, yes, he's an all-time great Syndra player, but will that keep working out later on the split? Will that work in international play? That's what I want to see. It does feel like he's been overruling or short-circuiting some of Yellow Star's calls, especially when it revolves around him. And the reason why that's interesting is because he is a dominant personality. Now, what's funny is, if you know his history in Copenhagen Wolves, he was a shy guy there, he was a nervous guy, he wasn't speaking up as much, he was the youngest guy. It feels like one of the ways he has developed as a person, I think is good, is that he has found his own voice, and he is confident in himself, and he knows that with the skills that he's got and the work he's put in, that he can carry, and that he can make good decisions, and he has embraced the shot calling aspect. But the problem is, when I see the way he's acting now when he's got Yellow Star in his team, I feel like this is a problem, because I hoped that they'd forced him to be the shot caller when he was last in Season 4 and Season 5. And I hoped that he'd see Yellow Star come in and go, phew, no more shot calling for me. I'm just going to be a star mid laner and I'm going to be the main carry of the game. Instead, it feels like maybe he wanted some of the shot calling responsibility in past seasons. Maybe he's seen that because the game rests on him, he wants to have that authority to do so. Because it feels like he is short-circuiting some of these calls. And by the way, this is a struggle of star players. Star players want to have the ball in their hands. They want to make the decisions. They want the game to live or die on what they do. I can understand this to some degree. It's hard to give up that control and to sacrifice someone else. But when they're as good as as High or Yellow Star or these sorts of guys or Ryu, you've got to some degree, because they're going to make better reads than you, and and even if you think they're wrong in this minor area, you're going to find out they were right in the macro sense later. Svenskeren, let's get to this guy. Svenskeren has been the most underwhelming player in this whole team right now. I feel like after watching him play, I actually feel like it's a mistake to get him. I think they should have gone with a supportive jungler. I think Svenskeren would have been a really good pickup if they had had a not very good AD carry. If the whole team had been based around Bjergsen and snowballing him and getting him going, I think Svenskeren could have been really good. I think instead, for this team with so many stars, I feel like they could have done with a supportive jungler, a macro-style jungler better. Because when I watch him play in TSM now, and when I watched him play in SK when they were going to shit, I have to say, it feels to me like N-Rated and Freddy122 microed this guy around the map. I'd say mainly N-Rated. Feels like they microed him because it doesn't seem like he's a very cerebral player who's very good at reading the game. Feels like he's just aggressive, forceful, tries to force the action, tries to just go in there and make things happen because he's very mechanically skilled and he's a bold player. But it feels like he's not a very good in a macro sense as a jungler. There's also, I mean, he made a point on one TSM episode that one of the problems that TSM has is they'll set up for a play and then not do the play. Now, the reason why that's frustrating to a player like him is if you've communicated to him, we're going to set this play up. If he's communicating to you and got everything there, he's not going to make sick decisions and adapt after that. He needs you to then make the play. That's what he's on the rails. He's on the course to do that thing, and you haven't done it. Now, for Hauntzer, I have the least to say. I think he's played well. I think he's one of the best players in the NA at his position. I think he's just doing well. I think people overrated him last year, but he's doing well this year. He's absolutely fine in this team. There's no problems. And he's been having good games. He's been pretty good on Poppy. I think there's no issues with Hauntzer. Now, as a team, I think that their macro has some real issues. I mean, we've mentioned some of these other games where they're winning with like mid-game team fights, or they're winning because the opponent does some utterly idiotic Baron call. I mean, they've done some shit like that themselves. Remember the game against Immortals? They were up 5-2 in kills. Then later on in the game, they are going for a Baron. They're trying to force a Baron. And they split apart. So 2 people are in the pit. Then the other 3 just move off to the left side of the pit. And they let Immortals literally walk in. Reignover just walks in, doesn't flash in, just walks into the pit, smites the Baron, and then they win the game like 5 minutes later. The Immortals team does. So I think macro decision-making has been reasonably poor at the moment, especially mid-game onwards. I think in terms of shot calling, they've been very patchy, and they haven't made many good shot calling. Most of the games where they have the good shot calling were actually against the worst teams. They haven't had many that were good. The strengths of the team, they have very strong carries. Doublelift and Bjergsen are some of the best carries in the league, historically and right now still. Doesn't always happen in the game, but they can carry very hard if they get the right opportunities. They have a solid top who's very reliable, consistent. That's all great. The big problems right now in the team is Yellowstar without the shot calling prowess is just an above average support player, and Svenskeren's been very average to underwhelming right now, and they're not a cohesive team either. Now, one thing that does tilt me is people keep talking about past TSM teams and using these terms of like they always, or things always happen this way. But it doesn't make any sense. Like people say, oh, TSM always get it together for the playoffs, man. You know, they might do badly in the split, but they always get together for the playoffs. TSM always figure it out in series. Even if they lose best of ones, they'll win in a series. Right? Remember, TSM, if you're talking about Season 5, only one player remains from that team, Bjergsen. That's it. Every other aspect of the team is totally changed. So it makes no sense to be like, they always do. What's a totally different team? They don't. This is Bjergsen now. Does Bjergsen always do that? It's totally different, mate. Not only that, they don't even have any of this coaching staff. They have a different analyst and a different head coach. So even that aspect of preparing for all that stuff about Loco Doco, if they lose the first game of a series, they win the next ones and adapt, that's all gone. That doesn't exist anymore. It's a different coaching staff now. So none of that shit works. Now, as a general point, super teams nearly always have problems. And the problem comes from too many stars. Now, part of being a star is usually you do the things that you're comfortable with and you want to do, and then you have team players who facilitate you doing that. They sacrifice something, they do something to set you up, they protect you, they facilitate you carrying the game. The problem is, like I mentioned with Svenskeren, we've got our stars set. The stars of this team are Doublelift and Bjergsen. Svenskeren isn't going to be the superstar jungler. I mean, you can see the struggle Rush is going through trying to become a more macro jungler, not just carry the game solo queue style in Cloud9. Svenskeren has to adapt to that. Yellowstar either has to shot call or become a much better support player who can facilitate Doublelift carrying the game. This is the problem in terms of the stars. This is why you can't just put a load of stars together at the best of their positions. I mean, think about this. In League of Legends terms, people in the past have talked about super teams and they've said about the world champions, oh, they're the best at every role. Here's the key thing to note about super teams in League of Legends. There has never been a super team that was a super team at its creation. Now, that's a very key point I'm emphasizing here. They only become super teams once they've won everything. That's when people overrate the supportive players and say they're the best at their role. What happens is, once you win something and you become dominant, people say every player was the best. There's never been a team where you put them together and on paper at the beginning, they were already all-star players, all the best, and then it went on to dominate and win and be very, very good. That's never happened before. You know what? If you want to make sick money for your star power, like TSM is right now, if you want to put together your super team, why not play Fantasy Esports at Alpha Draft?